Hi, Kevin Ledoux at Ledoux Guitars. Um, I did a video yesterday on developing half patterns and things to start building a guitar of your own design and encouraging people to do that. And I mentioned in the video that I didn't want to deal with bracing because I said I'll let much more scientific people take care of that. And then in the middle of the night, I thought, you damn fool. Uh, and here's why. Now, building guitars or a lot of different musical instruments, I see that as being a highly intuitive line of work and a highly intuitive activity. Um, there is a lot of science that's been brought to guitar building and a lot of CNC control and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not here to discount or poo poo anything that people like Trevor Gore or Michael Kasha or builders like Richard Schneider have pointed out to us. It would be foolish to deny science. We've seen enough of that in the past. Um, but I say that instrument building comes down to being an intuitive business because even after you apply all of the physics and the science that you care to, the question always comes in the end, does the finished guitar sound good or doesn't it? And since that's a subjective assessment, um, intuition, I think, has to re enter the picture all the time. Now, let's not confuse any of what I'm saying or what I'm promoting here with manufacturing. Manufacturers achieve their characteristic tone by grading their materials very carefully to close specifications and then making their processes absolutely consistent. And there will be variation, in any number of D18s, variation in any number of J200s or whatever model comes to mind. But that's the way they achieve what they do. As individual builders, you and I don't even have that luxury. And I think it's sort of foolish for us to even try. So I thought today I'd show you what I've come to find out over the last many years and how you can get started with this stuff without worrying too much about exactly what to do or where to place every brace and having a headache over it. You don't need to. And there is a good reason to take a nicely intuitive approach based on some reasonably known points of departure. What I do when I begin the process, let's just start with a raw top. Here's a raw top of terribly low grade, as you can see. And I advocate that just because a top is low grade does not mean that it's less musical. If one top is less musical than another, it's because the piece of wood just doesn't have song in it. And if another top is more musical, it's because it has song in it. It has nothing to do with the grade of the material. So as I wrap on this, I hope my lapel mic will pick these things up a little better than they have in the past. So what I'm hearing, I'll try and describe also. What I'm hearing in this top is a reasonably decent low end rumble, which is expected because this top right now is probably 155, 160 thousandths of an inch thick. Um, and I'm hearing some upper tones in there, some higher frequencies, just barely, but I'm not hearing a great deal of sustain. That's the information that I'm hearing. Now I'm flexing the top across the grain, and that tells me a little bit too. If that's really, really stiff across the grain, that might have some real potential. This top, in my opinion, has good potential, but it's not really screaming at me. It's not saying build a guitar right now. And by the way, what I'm speaking to you from is a mental database, which if you're a new builder and you're just starting out and you just want to get this figured out, keep this in mind that as you remember, and you can write notes if you want to and make recordings, record what you see and hear and feel. That's all very helpful. But you build a mental database. I think it was William Compiano and John Nadelson's book guitar making tradition and technology, they mentioned somewhere um, when they talked about voicing tops, they said something about arriving at a familiar end that the luthier has in mind. And you do that by building this mental database, and that's by remembering, if not writing some notes also, about what happened when you did one thing and then what happened when you did something else again and again and again. And after a while, you start to know the pathway without having to look it up in a book all the time. So I flexed that top, doesn't speak to me too much. Here's another one. This one is Alaskan yellow cedar. Now this one also has, to my ear, a characteristic cedar tap to it. There is a difference between cedar and spruce and the others. That's a given. And whether or not you use cedar, spruce, Sitka, Adirondack, Douglas fir, that all depends on what do you want to build, what do you like to hear. Um, don't let anybody tell you, well, if you're going to build a bass, you use this. If you're going to build a parlor, you use the horse hockey. You find a top that you like, and if you believe, for whatever reason, at the level of building you're at, if you believe that's the top that you want to try in that guitar, then that's the one you use. So yellow cedar, this has got a nice ring, and it's got a little better sustain to it. And by the way, if you're not aware of this, um, I'm pinching these between this finger, excuse me, and my thumb predominantly, and I'm looking for the nodal point inside the top where it does not inhibit vibration. And that tells me more about what the top is going to do than if I just grab it. See, I get nothing. So you have to fish around. Sometimes you got to rotate them and you'll hear different things. But this top, this has got some real potential here. This is a good one. Here's a made up top. This one happens to be cedar. Now, I hope you can hear that, because boy, that just rumbles and rumbles. And it's gonna rumble, and it's gonna be low pitch, because right now we're probably, I'm gonna say 130, 135 thousandths thick, and it's very broad. This top is 18 inches wide right now, so it's really gonna rumble with a low pitch. But can you hear that wonderful repeated vibration that I'm making with my hand, and the sustain? That's very, very nice. That's something that I pay close attention to. And I'm getting good stiffness across the grain. I said good stiffness. How do I know it's good stiffness? Because by now I've probably flexed over 1,000 tops. So again, mental database, very important, I think. Here's a Sitka, and this is made up. And can you hear the high pitch, which is very nice for this guitar, because this is going to be an 18-inch jumbo. Well, this is going to be a big, boomy, very low-end pronounced guitar right from the start. So a nice stiff top that rings those high frequencies tells me, and look, not too stiff though. It's not too stiff, but I get those nice higher frequencies out of it, and that tells me that I'm going to be able to recoup some of the treble tones that I'd like to at least keep them going as much as I can, but I'm going to get that rumble just because the diaphragm is big, and I'm going to get it because it's flexible. Similar condition, I think, with this top here, the cedar that I just showed you. Want to point out also, can you see this pencil mark right here? I have already looked at these, and that tells me where to put my thumb and my opposing finger. Can you hear the ring in that top? This is just delicious to my ear. And this is still over thickness. This is probably 130 thousandths. But I put this top up because I was tapping, and it had such a nice high frequency ring and a sustain that I like very much. This is going to be put into a classical guitar for myself. Here's another one, and I've put the mark on it already. This tells me where I can tap on it. This has got a wonderful, nice ring. It's got a good rumble, and it's got a nice sustain to it. And this is quite a nice top, even though it's consistent, little discoloration. It's a lower grade, but it's a real nice top. A lot of cross-grain silk. And by the way, this mark that I showed you that shows me where to grab onto that so that I can wrap on it. It's just something I do from time to time. I'll leave that in there. I'll put it right in the guitar and let some repair person or somebody that looks in there with a mirror later on say, what the hell is that? But it's just kind of a fun souvenir to leave. So you got a bunch of tops, or you've got a top that you want to work with, and you've decided what style of guitar you're going to build, you know, a jumbo or a concert size or something, whatever it is you're working on at the moment. The question becomes, well, what do you do with bracing? How do you figure out what sort of bracing you want to put in this guitar? Now, I'm going to talk about X bracing because classical guitars is a little bit different matter. I don't think as many builders, especially new ones, start with classical guitars. I did. It's hard to do. But anyway, I'm going to limit today to just X bracing, okay, because it's very popular. I don't do ladder bracing, as in, I believe is it Larrivee that does ladder bracing below the X. I don't do a double X. I stick with the Martin X brace pattern for one simple reason. It's known to work. And I don't think one needs to reinvent the entire bracing wheel to get a great sounding instrument. You can work with what's known because there's loads of room, as you're going to see momentarily, to make this guitar behave differently just with this basic pattern that we already know exists. So I'm going to reach over and turn the camera down so that you can see that top a little better, and hope we can get right in on this now. All right, now I've laid out the bracing pattern on here. I hope you can see that adequately. If not, just shout out and I'll move it for you. Oh, wait, that doesn't work, does it? Well, we'll keep going. I have a model here of an X brace, and I think this is the most important thing, most important considerations. This model serves very well because it's going to demonstrate a principle that's very, very important. The fact is, stiffness equates with high frequency, and flexibility or lack of stiffness equates with low frequency. Consider the tension on a bass drum head compared to the size and the tension of a snare drum head. I'm sure you can immediately understand that difference. Or another comparison might be the large head of a djembe compared to the very small head of a bongo drum. And if you just tap on either one of those, you'll hear an immediate difference. Yes, the depth of the sound chest and the interior volume has a lot to do with it. But for now, let's just stay with the top. So, based on my experience of building as many instruments as I have, I use this model as I bring the top to a musical thickness, which, when I say musical thickness, that means that I've reached a point where, when I'm going to turn the camera up again, I'll take that top and I'll thin it and I'll do this with it. And when I start to hear cardboard or sheet metal, that's when I want to stop and think about what I'm doing. Sometimes you don't quite get there, and there are minimums. You know, I wouldn't bring a spruce top, excuse me for that, I wouldn't bring a spruce top down under 100 thousandths, I don't think, no matter what. Others might, but I'm reluctant to do that. And when you're at 125 thousandths, you got a lot of lumber left, and I think you're overdoing thickness. So There's kind of a minimum maximum if you want that. But back down on the top now, um, the first thing that I want to decide is my heel block is going to go up here. My upper, can you see that? My heel block is going to go in here. My upper cross strut is here. Those are finite and they're not tonal. There isn't enough happening in this section of the real estate to worry about. You have to have the upper cross strut. You have to have the heel block. So just do it. But from there, I then determine what do I want my X angle to be. Keep in mind, stiffer equates with high frequency, more flexible equates with low frequency. Can you have all of both? No, never. You are not going to do this to your braces and maintain crystal clear trebles that sing out. It's not going to happen. You're not going to do this and expect that you're going to have a tremendous amount of bass in the instrument. It just doesn't work that way. Everything is a balancing act and a trade. So I'm going to decide just by using this model, I'm going to decide what I want my X brace to be. This is a jumbo guitar. It's a big one. The person that is buying this instrument has a rumbling baritone, if not even a bass voice. And boy, when he sings out and he strums chords on this thing, he uses this for vocal accompaniment. He wants that big guitar and he wants that low end. You know, he's doing the Johnny Cash thing or even lower, and that's what he wants. So I'm going to provide that nice rich bass with the large body, with a flexible top that might go a little thinner to get more of that, and I'm going to open that X right up. How many degrees? I don't recall with this one, but more often than not, my angles right here between the center line and that lower X it'll range anywhere from 49 to 55, 56 degrees, just to give you an idea. I'm not saying stay in that range. I'm saying that's what I do. You experiment from your own intuition and information that you find elsewhere. So once I've decided what my X is going to be, I'm good to go. And that determines the general size and shape of the bridge patch. Now, maybe we should back up. There are some rules. You see the bridge is drawn out right here. I want the bridge to be over the X, at least to some degree. I'm willing to take a little bit of a risk sometime, but you may feel less comfortable with that. But you want the X to be underneath the bridge. Remember that as you're looking at the bridge now in this video, the bridge is going to push this way in front of itself. It's going to curl the top downward to crush the guitar, and the back of the bridge is going to roll upward to explode the guitar, pull it up and open. So I like to make sure I'm less concerned about having X braces here. I'm more concerned about having them touch the wings of the bridge out here to keep that crushing force from operating so quickly, because we're going to take care of some other things down here. So the big thing to remember is close the X, stiffer, open the X, more flexible. The next thing I need to do is decide what I'm going to do with my two tone bars. Now, I said two tone bars. You may be building a guitar with just one tone bar in it. Guild used to put 3 in their 12 strings, and it still worked beautifully. They sounded great. So you could still try experiments there or work with that idea or pattern. My tone bars, I vary greatly. Richard Schneider pointed out years ago that as we move a brace, as we rotate a brace closer and closer to 90 degrees to the center line of the top, we are stiffening it like crazy. And we are also, if we get to 90 degrees, he claimed that we're shutting off just about all activity below the brace, that is on the opposite side of the brace from the point of excitation. I don't know that that's absolutely an objective fact, but he was, after all, working with Michael Kasha, I think they had a real good idea what they were doing. So I take that as solid information myself. So I decide where those braces go, how far apart are they going to be, and at what angles are they going to be. Um, I suppose we could also talk about ramping off and scalloping off, which I guess we'll touch on in a couple of minutes. But after I've made those decisions, then I decide, where do these finger braces go? I like to make sure that a finger brace hits pretty much in the neighborhood of the corner of my bridge. That's not chiseled in stone. It's not a law, but I do that because I'm looking at the downward force at that corner of the bridge, and I'd like to have at least one of those braces there to catch that. I have a tendency to want to use a 90-degree angle between my lower X and my finger braces, but I can see the logic in rotating those finger braces upward to give it a more direct strength against that crushing force. And my distance between those two is, again, intuitive, based on how much area there is here. Do I want to tighten it up by putting them closer together up here around the bridge? Do I want to loosen it up? Do I want to break that up evenly? And in this guitar, I just want to sort of break that up evenly. And that's done by eye. It's not done by calculation of this area and this one and this one. I think that would be beyond my mathematical capability anyway. So it almost has to be intuitive. I put finger braces in. I always use a finger brace that's only 1/4 of an inch wide. And excuse me for leaving the camera here for a second, but here's just a little gadget that I made to show me where those finger braces go. I put it against the line that represents the lower edge of the upper cross strut, and I trace it in there. And you can move this back and forth to suit, but I've marked a center line for a standard position, and so I can vary things at will. But this makes just a nice quick get it out of the way deal. You'll notice I don't have one over here. I have a reason. We're going to put an LR Baggs pickup system in this, and the preamp and control system goes here, so that brace has to be eliminated. I have my bridge drawn out here, and this line represents where the E string will fall. Now this line actually represents the high E position. So on the bass side of the guitar, it's irrelevant, but this is important for me to follow, so we go from there. How thick should the braces be? That is, how thick this way? I use 1/4 inch. I don't use anything else. I started out with thicker braces, and I think all they did was rob real estate from the top, and probably did not benefit me as well as they could have. How tall are the braces? Keep in mind, if they get taller, they're stiffer. Stiffer equates with high frequency. More flexible equates with low frequency. I rip my braces out at, I don't remember now, I think 21/32 of an inch, and then I arch my top, and then I carve the braces down to where I want them. I also put a strap across the joint. If I want this region to remain slightly more flexible, I'll use a spruce patch over that. If I want that to be nice and stiff and retain some of that stiffness, then I'll use a hardwood, maybe a piece of something decorative even. It looks nice when the customer looks inside the guitar. Scalloping. Scalloping, how much do you scallop those down? That depends on voicing the top. I can't tell you, take this much out, take this much out. But I look for nodal points at 2 3/4 to 3 inches back from the edge of the top, and that's going to be the peak of my braces. I do not scallop the upper X. I taper it off, and I ramp it off from 2 3/4 inches to 3 inches back. I do tuck these braces under the linings. It makes good sense because if one comes loose, at least you've got it trapped under there. Maybe that's not a good idea from a repair standpoint, but it seems to make sense. Also, this entire region, if you're going to scallop or taper your braces, The more original wood you leave in this region, the stiffer it's going to be. The more you surround the bridge patch area with your upper tone bars, the stiffer it's going to be. You move them closer, stiffer, farther away, more flexible. So in the nutshell, that's all there is to it. I say that's all there is to it. That's an awful lot. And then combine that with doming your top. I build 3 domes, 40-foot radius, 30-foot radius, and 25-foot. Obviously, um, those make some difference. Do they make a tremendous difference? No, not one thing you do is going to make a tremendous difference. It's not going to be the difference between daylight and dusk or even dusk and dark, but everything you do will have its nuance effect. Um, it's the accumulation of these things that have the drastic effect. So, you have to pick your way through. I want to mention bridge patches very quickly. This is quarter sawn maple, which I like for a bridge patch because it's readily available. It's been used traditionally, so it works out real well. I never make a bridge patch thicker than the top, and usually thinner. My bridge patches, 95 thousandths of an inch is about where they need to be. This is Palfero bridge patch material left over from fingerboards that I sawed out. Um, the more dense your bridge patch, it will tend to lend a little more clarity to the top. It contributes to high frequency because it's stiffer. That's the only reason. And you don't need just maple or rosewood for bridge patches. You can use white ash. You could use black locust. You could probably even use hickory. Um, you could even go softer if you wanted to with cherry or walnut. Then you may enter into some problems with uh, string balls pulling into it prematurely, but there's even a cure for that. Put a copper strip under there if you want to. That'll brighten things up a little bit too. So you have a lot of choices. Just make sure that it's always well quartered. And I think it's a good idea to not allow the grain of your bridge patch to run at 90 degrees to the top. The reason being that if you drill your bridge pin holes in a straight line, you're inviting a crack right there. I don't drill mine. I drill mine parallel to my bridge saddle slot. So for me, it's less of a concern. But cut your bridge patch out so that you've got the grain angling a little bit so that you're not drilling holes in a single line. So there is most of it right there. A quick rundown in what I hope is an interesting video for you. Turning the camera back up so that you can see me. Not that you really want to see me, but as you do this, I know the question still remains for a new builder or maybe a person that's only done 2 or 3 guitars and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I know what to do? Here's the key thing. When you begin, you don't. A Luther over in Ithaca, New York told me 25, 26 years ago. It was humorous, but it was informative. He said, when I built the first guitar I ever built, I did this and I did that and I did this and that. And he said, I didn't have the faintest idea what I was doing. He said, by the time I built my third guitar, he said, I didn't know hardly anything, but I had a whole lot of reasons for doing what I did. So the point is that as you build that mental database and you build from your own experience, not somebody else's. You build from your own experience. You learn what you can do and what works for you. And remember, please remember, that tone is subjective. You're working to get your guitar to sound the way you envision it. And when you arrive at that and you compare that with what you've done in your instruments, now you're focusing in and you can get right where you want to be. And you can complicate the issue, I guess, if you're going to build several size guitars and you're going to do different things with it. Yeah, it complicates the issue, but you can still get there. You can still put it together. So I want to encourage new builders and builders who have very little experience. I want to encourage you not just to design your own instrument bodies uh, and do things that way. I want to encourage you to start somewhere, figure it out, decide what you're going to do with this, and build one. And listen to how it sounds. And don't just listen to it for 3, 4 weeks and say, well, I was kind of a failure. Because you'd be surprised. I've built guitars that I didn't think were all that great. And all of a sudden, 2 months later, they seem to open right up. Go figure. Uh, can you predict the sound that you're going to get out of a guitar? I heard Richard Schneider, excuse me, not Richard Schneider, but Richard Hoover from Santa Cruz Guitars. I heard him in a panel discussion say that in his shop, they know about 70% of what the guitar is going to sound like before they even cut a piece of wood. Well, they've got a lot of experience, and he's got several people on staff that are doing the lab work for him. He gets to learn from everything they do. But for you as an individual or me as an individual, that process is slower. But you can arrive at having a very good idea of what your guitar is going to sound like before you even build it. Now, the next thing I guess would be, once you got braces glued to one of these things, what do you do with those braces to hear what you want to hear? And that's going to make this video way too long, so I'm going to stop here, hoping that I have offered you some useful and valuable information. And I'm going to ruffle feathers just once more. Don't turn away from the cork sniffers and the scientists. That would be stupid to disregard what they have to offer us. It's all valuable. But keep in mind that building intuitively along with that information provides you personally, it provided me, and it can provide you personally with that internal database that will make you the unique builder that you may want to be and make your guitars sound the way you envision them sounding. So thanks for watching. I really do hope you liked this, and I hope that for new builders and builders with very limited numbers of guitars behind you, that this has something to offer, if nothing else, a lot of encouragement. Keep building, and remember, we're doing this because we enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun, and it's very, very rewarding. If money is in the picture, profits, for now, set that aside and just learn to build the guitars and build them really nicely and get that under control. And then you might even be able to become a highly professional luthier like myself, earning, tens of dollars. And there are tens of dollars to be made building guitars. So from the largest luthier, that is the largest manufacturer of guitars in the entire town of Triangle, New York, happy building. I'm Kevin Ledoux, the Pragmatic Luthier.